My name is Nancy, and I work as a behavioral therapist at a small psychology practice in town. I have been doing this job for about 5 years now, and during that time I have worked with many different kinds of people. Over the years, I have seen hundreds of clients, and for a long time, I believed there was very little left that could surprise me. I truly thought I had already encountered every kind of situation that might come up in this line of work. That belief changed when a teenage boy named Peter became one of my clients. Peter was 15 years old. His father, Tom, always attended the sessions with him. Tom believed that Peter might be somewhere on the autism spectrum or dealing with some kind of social difficulty. According to him, Peter had struggled his entire life to make friends or interact comfortably with people his own age. During our therapy appointments, my goal was simple. I tried to talk with Peter about his interests, his hobbies, and the kinds of things he liked to do in his free time. I wanted to help him feel comfortable opening up about his life and emotions. In the beginning, that was difficult because Peter was extremely quiet and withdrawn. Getting more than a few words out of him took patience. Sometimes I would ask Tom if he could step outside the room for a few minutes so I could ask Peter some personal questions about his home life. Whenever Tom left the room, Peter seemed to relax a little and talk more openly. Still, I always had the feeling that Tom did not like leaving the sessions and preferred to stay present the entire time. From the conversations I did have with Peter, I learned that his parents argued constantly. According to him, they fought almost every night, and it had been that way for as long as he could remember. He did not have any siblings, and his family was very small, with almost no extended relatives involved in his life. One thing about me is that I absolutely love the fall season. I look forward to it every year. I enjoy everything about it, especially foods and drinks with pumpkin flavor. Pumpkin beer, pumpkin pie, pumpkin spice coffee. I love it all. During one of our sessions, we were talking about the cool fall weather outside. Peter mentioned that autumn was his favorite time of year. I told him I felt the same way, and joked that my love for pumpkin-flavored things was a big reason why. Later that same evening, I was already home in my robe, preparing to go to bed, when I suddenly heard a loud knock on my front door. It was after 9 at night, which is unusual for me. I rarely have visitors that late, so the sound immediately made me nervous. I walked to the window to see who might be standing outside. No one was there. When I slowly opened the door, I saw a small pumpkin sitting on the ground, along with a bottle of pumpkin-flavored coffee creamer. They had been placed right in front of my door. The moment I saw them, I felt a strange sense that this was not just a random coincidence. Only a few hours earlier, I had told Peter how much I loved pumpkin-flavored things. The next morning I tried calling Tom, but the call would not go through. Instead, I sent him a text message with a picture of the items left outside my door. I also explained that it was inappropriate and unsettling if a client had followed me to my home. Tom responded within 10 minutes. He insisted that his son would never do something like that. His response sounded almost offended, as if he could not believe I would accuse Peter of it. For a moment, I even questioned myself. Maybe it really had been some strange coincidence. Perhaps a neighbor had left them, or something equally harmless. The rest of the week passed, and I debated whether I should stop working with Peter as a client. In the end, I decided to wait and see how the next session went before making any decisions. The following Monday, Peter and Tom arrived for their appointment like usual. Peter behaved normally and seemed comfortable talking with me. In fact, he had become much more talkative compared to our earlier sessions. At that point, I began to suspect that Peter might have developed some kind of attraction toward me. I wondered if perhaps I was simply the only woman in his life who spoke to him kindly and treated him with patience. During the session, I casually mentioned the pumpkin items left outside my door. I brought it up in a light-hearted way without directly accusing him. I simply commented on how strange the coincidence was. While I was talking about it, I noticed Tom sitting in the corner, looking irritated that I had mentioned it at all. Peter acted surprised and agreed that it sounded like a strange coincidence. The whole situation felt confusing and unsettling, and I did not know what to think. Still, I decided that if something like that happened again, I would have no choice but to end our professional relationship. 2 nights later, I heard another knock at my door while I was sitting in my living room watching a movie. My stomach dropped instantly because I already knew what I expected to find. Once again, I looked through the window first. No one was visible outside. I slowly opened the door and immediately felt a wave of frustration when I saw more pumpkin-themed items sitting on my porch. This time, there was a pumpkin pie along with a box of pumpkin-flavored cereal and a package of pumpkin Oreos. It was just after 9 in the evening. I grabbed my phone, took another picture of the items, and sent it to Tom. I started typing a message explaining why I could no longer continue seeing them as clients. But before I could finish, I heard the sound of a phone receiving a text message somewhere close to my left. The sound was coming from the bushes near the front of my house. My heart began racing as I slowly walked toward the bushes and called out Peter's name. As I got closer, I saw someone crouched down, hiding among the leaves. But it was not Peter. It was Tom. Our eyes met, and he calmly said, "Hi, Nancy. You look beautiful as always." I screamed. I ran back inside my house and slammed the door, locking it just seconds before he tried turning the handle. He began banging on the door while I shouted that I would call the police if he did not leave immediately. Through the door, he apologized and yelled that he was leaving. From my window, I watched as he walked to his car, got inside, and drove away. In that moment, everything finally made sense. The gifts left on my doorstep, and even the strange noise I had heard weeks earlier when my side gate closed in the middle of the night. I had no idea how long he might have been watching my house. My brother is a police officer, and when I told him about what happened, he advised me not to bother trying to get a restraining order. According to him, there was not enough evidence to prove that Tom intended to harm me. It would most likely turn into a situation of conflicting statements. Even so, I reported the incident to the police. I also expressed concern that Peter might be living in an unsafe or unhealthy home environment. To this day, I still do not fully understand what Tom's intentions were when he followed me home and left those items outside my door. But based on the way he tried to open my door after I locked it, it did not feel like the actions of someone trying to be romantic. I mostly feel sorry for Peter. It now seems possible that his father only brought him to therapy as a way to get closer to me. It was a Friday night sometime in early October, many years ago. I was hanging out with 3 friends of mine, Jose, Brian, and Tanya. Like most teenagers in a small town, we were bored and looking for something to do that felt a little exciting for the season. The weather was perfect for being outside. It was in the low 60s, with a cool breeze moving through the air. Our town was painfully quiet, and there was never much going on, especially for people our age. We were too young for bars, and there were not many places to hang out at night. Eventually, we decided to ride our bikes up Miller's Road to an abandoned place people in town called Farmer John's Pumpkin Patch. Years before, it had been an actual farm. On one side, there used to be crops, and on the other side, it was thick forest. Whoever Farmer John really was no longer lived there. The land had been sold at some point, but the new owners never seemed to do anything with it. The buildings were just left sitting there, slowly falling apart. The ride up Miller's Road took about 20 minutes. It was one of those long country roads that hardly ever had traffic. Cornfields and scattered farms stretched along both sides of the road. By the time we reached the old property, it was already pretty dark out. We rode our bikes off the pavement and onto the grass, each of us holding a flashlight. The beams of light bounced around as we moved across the overgrown field. We leaned our bikes against the side of the old farmhouse where the owner used to live. After that, we started wandering around the property. The grass was tall and wild, and it was easy to imagine where the pumpkin patch used to be before everything was abandoned. We also found the old area where there had once been a small petting zoo for visitors. Exploring abandoned places always felt exciting, especially at night. At the same time, it carried this strange, uneasy feeling that made everything more intense. Eventually, we walked back to the farmhouse where our bikes were leaning. Getting inside was not difficult at all. We clearly were not the first people to try it. The front door had already been knocked loose from its hinges. All we had to do was push it open with a kick. Being inside the abandoned house instantly felt different. Even if you enjoy that kind of thrill, walking through a dark, empty house at night can make anyone nervous. And that was with 4 of us there together. After about 5 minutes inside, we started hearing noises from upstairs. They sounded like steady thumping sounds coming from above us. The pattern made it clear they were not random creaks from the house settling. Jose and I decided we would go upstairs to see what was making the noise. Tanya refused to come with us because she was already scared, so Brian stayed downstairs with her while we checked it out. When we reached the top of the staircase, the thumping became noticeably louder. It was definitely coming from the left side of the hallway. Our flashlights showed several open doors that likely led to bedrooms when the house was still lived in. The old wooden floor creaked loudly under every step we took. There was no way to move quietly on those boards. As we moved closer to the room where the noise seemed to be coming from, the thumping suddenly stopped. I quietly asked Jose if he thought it might be some kind of animal. He immediately told me to stay quiet. I slowly moved my flashlight into the room, sweeping the beam from the left side toward the right. Then the light stopped on something in the far corner. There was a man standing there facing the wall. On the wall in front of him, there appeared to be blood smeared across the surface. It looked like he had been repeatedly smashing his head against the wall to make those thumping sounds we heard. Jose pointed his flashlight at him too. Both of us immediately jumped back in shock. Without saying anything else, we rushed out of the room and ran down the staircase. As we reached the stairs, a horrifying scream suddenly erupted from the room behind us. It was so loud and disturbing that all 4 of us started screaming ourselves. We ran straight out of the house toward our bikes. While we were scrambling to grab them, we heard heavy footsteps pounding down the stairs inside the house. At the same time, the screaming grew even louder. We jumped onto our bikes and pedaled as fast as we possibly could away from the property. The screaming stopped before whoever or whatever it was ever came outside. None of us looked back. We kept riding all the way down Miller's Road until we finally reached my house. To this day, I still have no idea what we saw in that room, and honestly, I am not even going to try to explain it. When I was very young, there was a resort high up in the mountains that my family visited twice. The place had already been closed for years by the time I grew up, but in my memories, it was a pleasant, family-friendly destination. Both times we stayed, they were during autumn, because my mom loved seeing the leaves change color across the mountains. This story happened during the second trip. I was around 6 years old. My older brother Corey was about 10, and my youngest brother was probably 4. Naturally, my parents kept most of their attention on my little brother, while my older brother was expected to keep an eye on me. That evening, the resort was hosting a bonfire with marshmallow roasting and hay rides. We had already gone on the hay ride earlier, while the sun was setting. Afterward, everyone gathered around the bonfire for marshmallows and a small fireworks display. While I was standing near the fire, a man started talking to me. He asked if I was having fun and if I had visited the resort before. At one point, he told me he was one of the owners. Then he handed me a small laser pointer toy. Of course, I immediately trusted him because I was only 6 years old. Soon the hayride driver announced he would do one last ride in the dark. He said he planned to drive down the big hill behind the resort, which sounded exciting. My older brother suggested we should go on it. He had made a few friends during the trip, so he wandered off to find them so they could ride together with us. Meanwhile, I stayed sitting near the bonfire. My dad was drinking beer with another dad on the opposite side of the fire, and my mom was helping my little brother roast marshmallows. Eventually, I walked over to my mom and asked where Corey had gone. She told me he was already heading to the hayride and said I should hurry before it left. So I ran over to the short line of about 5 people waiting to board. When I climbed onto the wagon, there were already maybe 15 or 20 people sitting on the hay bales. I did not see my brother anywhere, though. I sat down anyway and waited while the truck engine started, signaling we were about to leave. Then I noticed the same man from earlier climbing into the wagon. A woman followed right behind him. When he spotted me, he walked over and sat next to me. He asked where my family was, and I just shrugged. As it turned out, my brother never actually got on the hayride at all. The woman sat beside him and looked at me with a smile. The man told me she was his wife. He asked if I still had the laser pointer he had given me earlier. I said yes and showed it to him. He smiled. During the ride, the two of them kept talking to me almost the entire time. The woman mostly sat there smiling while watching me. When we reached the top of the hill where the driver said he would speed down, the man noticed that I seemed nervous. As the truck went down the hill, he grabbed my arms and lifted them up into the air so I would do the no-hands thing people like to do on roller coasters. It actually made me laugh because the drop was fun. After that, the man asked if I had visited the arcade at the resort yet. When I shook my head no, he told me he had keys to many of the machines and asked if I wanted to try them. Of course, I nodded yes. He said he just needed to grab the key first and that he would take me there so the games would all be mine. Once the ride ended, people climbed down from the wagon one at a time. The man and the woman walked with me as we headed away from the bonfire. The woman held my hand and kept calling me sweetie whenever she spoke to me. The man said the arcade was not far away. As we walked away from the bright light of the large bonfire and onto the darker pathway leading toward the cabins and main buildings, I suddenly heard Corey calling my name behind us. I turned around and saw him standing there. I shouted back that we were going to the arcade. The man and woman both glanced back but did not say anything. My brother did not follow us or call out again. After we moved farther from the bonfire, the woman's grip on my hand tightened and we began walking faster. Something started to feel wrong because her grip was hurting my hand. I also noticed that we were not heading toward the clubhouse. Instead, we were moving toward the parking lot. When I asked where we were going, the man said they were going to get the key for the arcade machines. The next moment I heard my mom's voice screaming from behind us. She was shouting for them to let go of me. My mom came running toward us in a panic. The two strangers quickly stepped away from me. I remember the woman saying something about how they were just taking me to the front desk. My mom was furious. She yelled and cursed at them while they backed away and then hurried off into the darkness. I still wish my dad had been there with her because he definitely would have confronted the man. The worst part is that the couple was able to simply leave and possibly try the same thing with another child. My mom asked everyone around the bonfire if they recognized the man or woman. No one had seen them before. She reported the situation to the resort staff and also contacted the police, but by then, the couple had already disappeared. Even now, the thought that I nearly got kidnapped by two strangers when I was only 6 years old still makes my stomach turn.